Recorded.
All right, guys, so welcome to Level 1, Lesson 1. As always, everything that we're going to be talking about throughout our entire classes is for educational purposes only, and nothing is intended as any type of investment advice. All right, so let's talk about what we're going to be doing over the next 2 weeks. So this entire class is going to be based off of understanding how to tape read. That is really the ultimate goal. So every time that you guys, even, I set a goal for myself, but every round of classes that we do, you guys want to set something, set a goal for yourself, something that you want to focus on that has, it's going to affect your trading in, the greatest way. We talk about that all the time. But something that you want to work on, that you're going to interpret certain things that I say for that specific type of category, okay, genre category, whatever you want to call it. All right, but we're going to be focusing. I want you to just understand. So level 1, really what we're going to do, I know some of you guys have reached out to me and I get a little bit too advanced too quickly. All right, and I understand it's very hard for someone that's just completely brand new to really be able to understand everything. A lot of it's just going to be like, crap, I don't know a ton, and it kind of gets a little bit overwhelming. So we're going to break down the beginning of level 1 pretty, especially the first class, the first 2 classes. We're going to break it down to the basics, okay? We're going to go into really the foundation of what needs to be understood. And then when we move over to level 2, we're going to start getting into some intricate ideas of what game plans are. Okay, we're going to use a lot of the actual live market itself, okay, when things are coming in, and it will make a lot more sense as we transition from level 1 into level 2. But, for instance, just some examples that you could have: understanding when something stands out, understanding when a difficulty of trade. I feel like a lot of people aren't using difficulty of trade too much, which is one of the most important parts of, of something actually being able to stand out. And then we go into level 3. This round, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be following stocks and understanding everything that we see that goes through the tape. We're literally going to analyze every type of print that goes on with a stock. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to pick a stock, okay, that has a lot of volume and that's moving. All right, and everything that comes in, we're going to literally break down whether it's important, whether it's noise, whether it can help us, or whether it can't. And from there, we really should, at the end of the day, have a great foundation of exactly how tape reading needs to work. Because sometimes we forget, all right? And we're going to talk about in a second common mistakes that people make in tape reading, all right? And I feel like it's one of the best spots for us to actually start because most of us probably did this. I know I did. I know, some of the best traders that I've ever trained before have done the same thing. So understanding that's going to be a very important part of really learning of what you should be looking at and what when we see something that comes in time and sales really shows us this is how we're going to trade it. So I want to start off first, okay, asking, and I want to admit something, and I've admitted this many times before in many recordings before. Is anyone still not 100% positive what an ask print versus a bid print means and how it really works? Because I remember when I first started reading Time and Sales, guys, I'm going to be completely honest with you. For the first 3 months, I honestly, I was back and forth and back and forth. It was just, for some reason in my simple mind, it just didn't click. And it took a long time for it to actually click to the point where I just understood exactly what it really was. But don't be embarrassed if that's the case, because if you don't understand that foundation, I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to be able to understand anything else that happens. But it really did take me a long time, and it sounds embarrassing, but I'm the first one to admit it, and an overly long time. Okay, so is anyone here not know that exactly? To upward, be able to basically, if I asked you exactly what it was, to be able to explain it the same way that I would be able to. Because if you don't, we need to spend a few seconds on that. And if not, we could just cross it off, but do not be embarrassed. Because it took, and Doug just said, it took him a longer initially it took him a longer time too. And guess what? There's nothing to be embarrassed about. It takes everyone a little bit longer. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed sometimes, and it took me a long time. All right. All good. Took me 2 times, you guys. I'm 100%, but I'm struggling interpreting above and below when looking at the orders on the matrix. So essentially what an above means, all right, and let's go to a stock that just isn't really doing anything. That's too much volume. Let's go to SSKN. That should be fine. Okay, perfect. So essentially what above the ask would mean, Jim, is that if right now we can see the ask is 136, okay, that's the next spot. Now, if I wanted to get in the stock right this second, okay, and I tried to get in at 136, am I necessarily going to get filled? Just because the ask is there, if I put my ask order out there, am I guaranteed to get filled at that price? Yay, I gotta wait in line now. Now I'm behind this guy's order. So now I'm waiting in line. That stock they might switch the orders and now it might go straight back up. So what's a great way I can guarantee that I'm gonna be able to get into the stock? Well, be willing to pay more than what the ask is. Because somebody right now is willing to sell it at 136, okay, a lot of people are gonna be willing to sell it to me at 145. I'm just using numbers, but that's above the ask. So when I put an order up there and it gets filled up there, it comes in yellow because it's showing that I actually wanted to get into the stock quickly. Now, if I do it and it shows up in yellow, guys, 100% you know that I was buying and going above the ask. And when I say I just mean, a retail trader, someone trading, let's say 1,000 shares, 200 shares, 500 shares, whatever. All right. Now, what happens if it's overall, if that above the ask is like 7 prints over 1,000? Okay. Does that give the same thing as let's say my 500 shares above the ask means? Is that going to be the same thing? No. Why not? Why isn't it going to be the same thing whatsoever? Man, this is one ugly looking stock. Why is it not the same thing in that case? Well, we got to think about it. The market makers can do whatever they want. Okay, market makers, when they do that, they literally print stuff in just the weirdest spots sometimes, but they don't have to, because essentially if a market maker really wanted at 136, let's just say to buy 2,000 shares, could they? Essentially, they could. So for them to go above the ask, it's reported differently. We can't really take big prints in that color as anything, but we can see retail being stupid. But at the end of the day, retail being stupid and buying 500 shares, is that anything we even ever need to pay attention to? That's something that we should ever even think about more than for not even an instant, not even let our eyes analyze it. No, it doesn't mean anything. So essentially what that tells us is that above the ask, it gives us a great indication of a level that's important to somebody. Okay, and this is obviously on the market maker side, or retail 500 shares. I don't care. Anytime you see 500 shares, I don't care what level it is. It's not important. It's just that simple. Okay, but when you get a market maker that comes in with a huge amount like that, then guess what? Sometimes they'll do it, and I want you to understand this sometimes this way too, is that sometimes they'll do it just to confuse people. Because don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people out there that do tape read. Now, the percentage-wise is disgustingly low. But when you take, what is there, 7 billion people in the world, you take 7 billion people, let's just say a quarter of them are traders. You take that quarter, the amount of people, see what I'm saying? So sometimes they'll do something just great. But guess what? When somebody does something to trick you, should I care? Unless it's an hour, we're going to get there during our tape reading. There's certain situations like a market maker trap and stuff like that where yes, 100%. But overall, when you see those prints, guys, unfortunately, you have to mark it down as a level. So we know that level is important. Now, why do we mark it down as a level as a tape reader? Okay, this is something that a lot of people, I don't think, understand, because they write down this level, but they don't do anything with it. Why is it important to write down that level as a tape reader? Even though it doesn't help us with direction or help us with really anything, why is it important? Because it means that smart money is at that spot. And if smart money is at that spot, place to look for information and reactions. And not really, information and reactions kind of fit into the same category, but yes, the reactions. Because what happens is when you see that, how often does it come back to that exact spot after it leaves? So if we know smart money's there, the next time it comes around, we can look at what the reaction is, and that's going to give us an indication of exactly what that person was looking to do. You see what I mean? So that level at that moment's not important. I mean, excuse me, the prints at that level are not important at that moment because they can't tell us anything. So we ignore them. But we make a note that we know that there's smart money there. And when we, let's just say there's smart money and there's smarter money. Okay, smart money is, let's just say, a really good trader, and smarter money is a great trader. All right, so when we see a greater trader is going to pull stuff like that, where they put stuff out there that doesn't really give that direction, and they hide. It could be in between the bid and ask. It's almost the same thing as if it's inside the bid and ask. All right, and we see some huge prints come in there. That level is so important because when it comes back to that, the reaction move is going to be something. So I want you to break down game plans like this, okay? So when we go into a trade, and I want you to think of psychology, and we're going to do a lot more with the psychology of how our brains work when we go today in our level 1 lesson 2. Okay, but I want you to break down a position. I want everyone here to think that they're in SSKN, and I'm using this just because it's not moving. Obviously, if you're in this, you probably should never trade again because it doesn't fit any category. Okay, but I want you to say right now you're in a position from 120, just making up numbers. So right here, you're in this position, and let's just put the horizontal line just so we can see and get the visual going. So we're in a position right here. Has anyone ever not looked at their position when it came to 120? Has that ever happened? Has anyone ever been a position? Well, don't get me wrong, if you're trading a lot of stocks, sometimes you kind of forget something. It does happen. But for the most part, if you're trading one stock, if you're in at 120 and the stock is now at 122, are you ever not looking at it? Ever? Think about that. The number doesn't matter. Are you ever not looking at a position when it's right at your entry? Of course, it's not that it requires it. You have to. Who the hell's not looking at their position when it's at an entry? You know what I'm saying? So you got in at 120. Now it comes back down here. There's no way in the hell. First of all, there's no way that you haven't been watching it since 130 or 125. But once it gets here, you know for a fact that you're looking at it. Now, most of you can't do anything about a position. Okay, so if the stock comes down to 130, okay, it comes down to 130. You're basically looking to get out. Now, let's think of the psychology on the other side of the game plan. And somehow we've got so advanced even when we weren't trying, but it is what it is. All right, so think about a market maker. What are the market maker's options? Your options are two things. You can sell your position or you can just let it go. That's your options. What's a market maker's options at this 120 right here? What are their options? That's one option, Jason. Jason says place a huge order on the bid to hold it up. That's absolutely one of their options. They could then pull that order, yes. So now forget about orders. What are the other parts? Okay, those are pretty much the two things they could do with orders. Forget about orders now. What else can they do? They can let it go. They could drop it. They can buy a huge amount to then push this back up. They can sit on their head. But do you see how many options they actually have at that point? They can do anything they want because they make the market. So it's so important that once we see a position come into a spot, even if it's not a position we can do anything with, once it gets there, our eyes better be laser focused on our time and sales, because what they do at that point is going to tell us, or it doesn't always tell you, but it's going to give you a great window into exactly what they're looking to do. If they let it go, okay, do market makers lose money? And don't give me the real answer. Give us what we have to go on, because sometimes we forget about this. Is that our assumption in tape reading is that a market maker will always have to make money. If they don't, they have no more job left, and we know that. So they're never wrong. So if they just let it go past, what does our assumption have to be? Why did they let it just go past 120? Not done building. Has to be building a bigger position, because they wouldn't just let it go down here to then sell to lose. So they have to be building a bigger position. So that no prints just gave us a huge indication of what had to happen. Now we get a ton of prints on the buying side at 120. What is that telling us? And this is level 2 stuff, but when we're on the right train of thought, sometimes I'll figure out something to change. This was like a level 2 class, but either way. So accumulating, but it depends the amount of prints. So if we get a short-term prints here at that 120, now we're going to be looking for it to go back up. If we get longer-term prints here, we're going to expect it to keep on coming back. But either way, it's still telling us the person's coming up. Do you see how at that level itself, just based off the reaction we have with time and sales, we can now decide exactly what their game plan is and what they're looking to do. Now you add the orders on top of that, and that's, that changes everything. Now that adds even more going into it. But at this moment, all we know is that there's a market maker there. Do you think there's any market maker out there that buys, let's just say 100,000 shares at 120 and then just lets it go? And that's it. It either goes up or it goes to zero. Any market makers out there doing that? It's not a chance. No, not one with a job. But you see what I mean? So right there, it just goes to show you that what goes on at the level where they already showed you they are is a huge thing to look at. All right, now I don't want to go too much further into this yet, because once again, what the problem is we end up getting too advanced too quickly, and a lot of you guys have kind of voiced that. So I want to break things down simple. It's just amazing how these type of answers these type of kind of lessons can come from me asking, does anyone understand what the bid and ask prints are? You see how advanced it gets so quickly? Okay, but down, see, but it's not even a rabbit. Oh yeah, I guess it's exactly down the rabbit hole. But let's I'm gonna focus this class on not doing that type of stuff. So I want you guys to understand something. All right, what's the key to tape reading? Now there's a lot of important factors, but what is the key to tape reading? A good pair of eyes. And you know what's funny that Doug just said that? I just got my new glasses finally after it was like 2 months. They got caught in the lens factory, and then my prescription was wrong and blah, blah, blah. But I finally got my glasses, and I'm going to tell you something. My life is just so much better. And I'm not just talking about my life as in trading. I'm talking about just being able to see again. Because years and years and years sitting at a computer really do affect your eyes. So when he says that, I'm going to tell you something right now. If you think you need glasses, stop putting it off. Do not put it off, because life gets so these past 2 days have just been a pleasure to be able to see things again and my eyes not go blurry. But that's no joke. So just keep that in mind. Focusing on things that stand out. So literally, can I read? So Andy, I'm not even going to keep going. Okay. This is what I have read. The key to tape reading is finding what stands out, okay, compared to what's normal. That is exactly what the key to tape reading. I sat down for a while, and I sat down trying to kind of think about why is it so easy for me? And keep in mind, it was not always so easy for me. It took 10 years to get to where I am. So it's not like I had an easy road of after 6 months just started killing trading. That did not happen. Okay, but why is it so easy for me to just kind of not? And the reason I say easy is because anyone ever sit there and just kind of not paying attention, where you're reading it, yes, you're acknowledging what's happening, but you're just not paying attention. And then all of a sudden something happens and you just see it perfectly. Now that took 10 years to get to. Okay, but that's kind of what I mean by that, is that we need to understand that the things that stick out that's what means everything. Now, what's the only way that we can find things that stick out? 2 words. And this needs to be the #1 focus of every single person every time they look at a stock. There we go. Print personality. Okay, print personality is what changes everything. Well, screen time, yes. I mean, screen time helps you understand what print personality is, but without knowing what a print personality is, can we possibly see something that stands out? Just think about that. It's really kind of black and white. No, we cannot see something that stands out without understanding what a print personality is. So in a nutshell, and this is another thing that we're going to kind of go into, I actually have categories I broke down, but that's going to be a level 2 class. All right. But I want you to understand what a print personality actually means. For instance, let's look at INO real quick. What's INO's print personality? Easiest way, guys, I'm going to tell you something right now. Yes, print personality is how a stock typically prints with bigger shares. So how a market maker will typically print within that stock. I'll say it again so you can write it down if you don't have it. But a print personality is broken down at how a market maker typically trades in that type of stock. Okay, so the first, if we look at INO right now, guys, does INO have any problems making big bursts of prints? Not at all, right? So print personality in this is it prints a lot. So a difficulty of trade, and difficulty of trade is literally just that. I mean, I literally, no creativity whatsoever within the name that I made up. It's just if it's hard to do. So what's a hard trade to make an INO? There's not really many because it can print a ton of shares. So trying to find a difficulty of trade in a stock like INO is almost pointless, isn't it? So in a case like that, and we're going to get to things, common mistakes of tape reading, but I want you to understand something. If finding something that sticks out and you find difficulty of trade and you're looking for a difficulty of trade in something that prints a huge amount, is there a point to that? Are you wasting your time, or is that something you should be doing? So should be looking for it. Okay. One thing about it, if a stock prints a huge amount, for it to be a difficulty of trade, is there any way that you're not going to see it in the chat room? Well, so it's not that there's better things to do, because we're sticking with INO. Remember, we're going to trade INO. We're not going to just go look for something else in this case, in this example. But I want you to understand something is that trying to find the chances of something coming into there to show you the difficulty of trade is almost non-existent. Because if we saw right now, if we saw it comes up to 1450 and we saw 25 prints, anyone here going to be shocked? Would anyone be like, oh, holy crap, INO traded 20? No, because it does it all the time. So that's not something. So when we know a stock has a very low possibility of giving us a difficulty of trade, we have to look for other things. We have to find other variables, because are we going to be able to put a large percentage on any type of prints we see in INO? Now, yes, if it hits 14 over and over and over and over and over and over again, yeah, we know the stock's going to go and make a huge move up. But thinking on the day trading side, that takes hours, that takes days for something like that to happen. That's not going to help us trade. So what we have to understand is that if we're not going to find something like that in a stock like this, we need to focus on the orders more. We need to focus on the patterns more. We need to put a larger focus on other variables, because the prints aren't going to really give us that definitive, this is what has to happen. See how that works? So understanding how to find something that stands out, can we really, unless it's so blatantly obvious, find something that stands out in a stock like INO? Can we really? Well, see, harder and can we are two different things. So harder, it's not hard to see when INO gives us a big difficulty of trade. It's not hard at all, because it's literally going to fill up pages of your time in sales. It's actually really easy to see, but statistically, the chances of it happening are not very high. You see the difference there? So it's just not really there. So we have to use feel, we have to use patterns, we have to use orders, we have to use other things that come into there. So just understanding that is that there's certain stocks, guys, that to find something that stands out is almost impossible. Because right now, if we don't get like 20 prints that come into I&O, it's just going to look like a bunch of mess. We're going to see some buying. We're going to see a burst of selling. We're going to see a burst of buying. We're going to see a burst of selling. So in order to actually tape read, we have to understand the print personality of the stock before we get into it. Otherwise, what are we doing? We're spinning our wheels. How many people, before we just talked about this, would have just looked at this 1430 and thought this was good buying? And be honest, guys. Remember, this is kind of like almost therapy sometimes. If you're not honest with yourself and you try to lie about it, well, guess what? Nothing's going to happen. You have to understand that sometimes we're wrong, and sometimes we thought something, but yeah, you'd think this is buying. But guys, in reality, is this anything compared to what print personality is? So if it's not anything, what essentially is it? If it doesn't mean anything, there we go. See how easy it is to understand what noise is when you break it down simply? It's chumming us in, and that's exactly it, Tracy, is that understanding that print personality. Now let's talk about some common mistakes that tape readers make. Okay, so the number one thing is that you try to understand every print. All right, and the reason we just went over print personality first, and once again, like I said, I'm going to give you guys, and there was a level 2 class we're going to do, and we're going to go through actual print personalities because there's only so many categories. You guys got to remember, trading's been going on since, you're talking about before, the late 1800s, early 1800s. I forget the date right now, but either way, it doesn't really matter. But it hasn't changed. So there's only so many categories that everything is going to fall into. So when we understand what those categories are, it really helps us be able to understand exactly what we need to be looking for in the print. Okay, but trying to understand every single print, okay, how do we combat that? And please make sure you guys, I know, I was joking with Andy the other day, we were talking about like the original level 1 classes. And I tell every class, the beginning class, I tell you to get a paper and a pen. Okay, if you don't have a paper and a pen at this point, guys, you're literally wasting your time. If you're just listening to this and not actually taking notes, you're not going to benefit from it. Okay, but make sure you have a notepad and a pen. So we're trying to understand every single print. How do we combat that? Because knowing what a mistake is, that's great, but it doesn't help unless we know how to stop it. How do we combat trying to understand every single print? Differentiating between market maker and retail. Okay, so let's even forget about retail. Let's only look right here. Let's just look at bigger prints, because for the most part, guys, when we talk about print personality, is print personality ever going to be over here? Yeah, because print personality is coming from market makers. I don't give a shit what the retail print personality is. This is what I care about. Okay, so this is what we have. So major and minor levels. Major and minor levels, kind of. But we're going to get to something else in a way in a second, Andy, that's going to tell you that not really. How do we combat trying to read every print or understand, not read every print, because you got to read every print. But, well, you don't technically have to read every print, but you understand what I mean. But trying to understand every single print, how do we combat that? Know your print personality. If it doesn't stand out, we just went over this. If it does not stand out, it's noise. If it's noise, do you need to understand it? If it's noise, do we need to understand it? Let it go. I just, Dota just had Frozen on. That's funny. No, we don't. Unless, here's a little bit of a change there. Unless, what if there's a ton of noise that goes the same way? What if we just keep getting a ton of noise at like 1430 on the ask, and then 1440 on the ask, and 1460 on the ask, and we get a ton of noise that comes in? Does that now not become noise? Think about that. Is it still noise, or now is it something that we need to look at? There we go, Andy. That is now, he's right on top of things. That now becomes a change in personality, because if we're just getting tons of noise and nothing else, guys, what happened to the print personality? What happened to the print personality now? Well, obviously, difficulty of trade got a lot smaller. Now it's a new personality. We have to take that into account. So what was noise before actually isn't going to be noise. You see what I mean? So if you start seeing a ton of noise, and then if you're ever looking at time and sales, and you're looking at your bigger time and sales, and then it's just noise forever, is it noise or did you pick the wrong print personality? Is it noise or did you pick the wrong print or think the wrong print? It's the wrong personality. So just remember that. That's a really easy way to understand that you don't know what its personality is if you think everything is noise. Because can everything always be noise within a stock, guys? Is that possible? No, because then a stock would never go anywhere. All right, so just something to kind of think about as you come in, but trying to understand every single print is not going, you're not going to get anywhere. Like we look right now, you know, coming into here, when I see this whole bunch of crap, this is nothing. It literally just doesn't mean anything to me because the person that I'm following, and obviously we're not following someone right now, but the person that I'm following, that person's still in control because this isn't going to take them out of control. ZM is a good example. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No question. All right. So next part that is a huge mistake in tape reading is that thinking all controlling prints are the same percentage. Thinking all controlling prints are the same percentage. What do I mean by that? What does that mean to us? How much of a percentage do controlling prints give us? 60%, right? 60% comes from controlling prints. Do you mean this? If I'm going to talk about something, I mean one specific stock. Okay, so thinking all controlling prints are the same percentage. So in that same stock, thinking that if you have 7 prints versus 10 prints versus 15 prints, those are all going to have the same percentages. Now, let's also talk about, just move this real quick. Okay, thinking that at 14, you have 5 prints. And at 1425, you have 5 prints, and 14 at 50, you have 5 prints. They all have the same percentage. Now I want to talk, and this is, going to bring a little bit into, we're not going to get too far into the chart and the patterns and places to look for yet, because that's another class that we're really going to get involved into it. But I want you to understand, let's just use like a simple one. 1450 has a double top now, right? And I'm just rounding, but let's just say it's at 1450, we have a double top. So prints on the ask at 1450 mean a hugely different thing than ask prints and the 5 ask prints at 14. Do you see what I mean? And this is, like I said, all the common mistakes in tape reading that we're going through, we're going to fix all these mistakes. I promise you, because each class is specified off of these mistakes. Okay, but you see how the difference here? Ask prints at 1450 mean a hell of a lot more than they do at 14 because of the way that the stock is. So we can't just look, don't get me wrong, we could just look at prints and not need a chart, but the chart gives us so much information. We know if it's coming up to a double top and we see more buying again at a double top, how do we interpret those versus a stock that's just moving at 14? Why does 1450 mean a whole lot more? What part of those prints mean more? Why do those prints mean more? It's a huge spot. This is a big resistance point for it. So if we get the buying at that, those are reaction prints versus here, just prints. Okay, reaction prints, which one gives me more of a specific understanding of what the person behind the other computer is doing? Reaction prints or controlling prints? Now, controlling prints can be reaction prints. Reaction prints don't have to be controlling prints. In case you guys weren't confused at all. Yeah, reaction. Why are reaction prints so much more important? Because they're reacting to information we were already told. When you just have regular prints that come in, there's nothing to compare it against. But those reaction prints are actually giving us information based off of what we saw. Remember we just talked about, and man, I would have traded the crap out of this, but Remember what we were just talking about, okay? As you come up to, to a certain point and you look at what the reaction's going to be, okay? What is the reaction here? And this is just to use an example. What's the reaction coming up to 1450 here? Okay, we look at the print personality and everything that it's been, and then we come up and we see this. We see this right here. Difficulty of trade, yes or no? Let's just kind of break it down real quick. And once again, of course. Not only is it difficulty of trade, but that's pretty damn ballsy, isn't it? To take a 5 cents underneath, and 5 cents is where the 50 is. They were talking about 1447. So you're talking about 2 cents underneath this huge resistance point. So guess what? This guy I like a lot. So now this is who I'm looking for in everything else that we're going for. You see that? This stock needs to break 1450 based off of what this person just showed us, because those were reacting to coming to this resistance. Now, if we just saw these prints and they came in at 14, or let's say 13.95, that's not the same thing. It's still telling us that it needs to break 14, but there's nothing there that it's fighting. So what adds a difficulty of trade? So technically you're right. In this case, it's not a difficulty of trade because the orders are actually there to be able to trade it. It's trading 102,000 shares, but it's completely against what the print personality has been since we've been looking at it. Because if you look, see all these bursts, see how if we go down the entire line, we haven't seen this as a burst. So I misspoke a little bit when I just said, so it's not that it's just ballsy, but it's also way bigger than everything that we've seen. So it's not technically a difficulty of trade because it wasn't hard to make that trade. You're 100% correct, but it's more than what we've seen coming into there. All right. I'm glad that you just pointed that out because that could get confusing. But see, because like I said, I could go do this right this second. If I put my order out there, I could put this many shares and I could get this done at, at 1445, but it's more than what we've seen coming in. So it shows us that when it's more, so it's not a change in personality because it's not, the personality is still exactly the same. All it is something that sticks out compared to what the print personality is. Because in order to have a change of personality, something has to keep happening over and over and over and over again, but it sticks out of what the actual personality is at that moment and what's happening. Exactly, it's relative to what comes in. So those mean a lot more because of the fact. Now, we also know with INO, because of how much it could print, those aren't long-term either. They're a little bit longer term. We definitely got to expect a pullback, but it's telling us that that person just broke down that 1450. That red dress in the matrix, and that's really what it comes down to. Okay, so thinking about all controlling prints are the same percentage, okay? Now, thinking all prints at a level are controlling prints. I see this all the time. Okay, what's people's favorite thing? And I use the chat room to understand to really get an idea of what goes on. Now, obviously, time and sales is number one. I look for retail, I look for their reactions and things of that nature. But the chat room is really what gives me a huge kind of window into, even when someone's being told something, what their mind actually thinks. Okay, are all prints at a level controlling prints? Well, obviously the answer is no. But what are people's favorite thing to do when typing out a call in a chat? It's their favorite thing to do. And of course, if it's the beginning of the morning and stuff, then yeah, of course, you put up what you say. Yeah, prints at a level. But that does not mean that they're controlling prints. Okay, no, it depends. So how many prints at the level? Okay, controlling prints need to be at a level, but prints at a level are not necessarily controlling prints, because we got to think about something. Let's go to INO right now. INO on average, if you had to give me a number, how many bursts, how many prints come in a burst of it right now? Print personality is very easy to read. How many bursts, give or take? 6 to 8 might even be a little bit high, but I mean, you're right there. 4 to 6, 8, once again, it's right in that area. But off the top of my head, the number that comes is 4 to 6. Okay, so if I get 4 prints at a level, are those controlling prints? No, they're not controlling shit. Excuse my language, but they're not. That's not controlling anything. What that's doing is giving us something we can trade and seeing a position that has to make money. But that's not controlling prints. What are they controlling with 4 prints? Those are prints at a level that will tell us what it needs to do to be able to trade them, but they're not controlling. Do you guys understand? And obviously, that was going to sound really stupid, but obviously everyone understands what controlling means. Okay, what is that? What does that mean for print wise? What are controlling prints? What are controlling prints? Where the market maker is, that's too ambiguous, because remember, market maker, we know market maker is there, even if they're 4 to 6 prints. That's a lot of, how many retail traders do you guys know out there that are trading, let's just say 10,000 shares at a time? Anyone know many retail traders doing that? And 10,000 shares is not a lot at all. The person who's telling us where they want to, yeah. He's such an ass, Doug. But overall, that's not many people. Okay, that's the best way for me to put it. Doug likes to throw me off track. But there's not many people out there that are going to be doing something like that. So even for prints, guys, that's a lot of times it's going to be a market maker. And even if it's not a market maker, it's going to be somebody that's got a good amount of money and a good amount of skill, because you don't see that very often from people that have no idea what they're actually doing. So back to what controlling prints are. Controlling prints mean somebody comes into a stock and says, this is mine. This is mine. And by this is mine, they mean I will not lose money. What would controlling prints look like in I&O right now? What would controlling prints look like in I&O right now? 15 to 20, 30. Yeah, remember, guys, we just talked about 4 to 6. 4 to 6 was the norm of what we're seeing coming out to there right now, right? So the 20 plus, that's a lot. 30 plus, that's a lot. If 4 to 6 is average, so what would controlling prints be? 100% more prints, would that be controlling? So let's say 8 to 12, would that be controlling? Nobody wants to answer because you guys aren't sure where I want you to go with this yet. Yes, they would be. Now, it's not one that's going to be like, damn, that's really controlling the stock, but of course it would be. That's more prints than we're seeing from anyone else. Remember, if you're controlling a stock, that just means that you're controlling it. If every print, guys, you got to think, just like as simple as this is, everything is relative. So if the print personality was 1 print at a level, and you got someone with 3 prints at a level, so nothing but 1 prints for the entire day, and someone comes in and prints 3 times at a level, who's controlling the stock? The 3 prints. It's that simple. So you're talking about 100% more. It doesn't just have to be something absurd, because essentially if we get 20 to 30 prints in I&O right now, guys, are they technically controlling the stock? Or do they know something's going to happen? Think about this. Think about how to understand prints. If you get 20 to 30 prints, right? There we go, Amy. They're longer term. So if they're longer term, are they controlling the stock? Remember, we're day traders. Well, I mean, I teach day trading. I'm a day trader. You know, everyone pretty much does a lot of day trading. But you got to think about something. A huge amount of prints, those aren't controlling prints. What that is someone longer term that can sit there forever. If you break it down, controlling prints are somebody that's going to be on the shorter term side of things, but completely outweighs the rest of the print personalities that we've seen out there. Now, this can be done in a few different ways. Now, they could hit the level 5 different times, okay, with a decent amount of prints with the print personality, because then we know the market maker at that level is the controlling market maker, the dominant market maker that's going to be out there. But you have to remember, if you see pages of prints, that technically isn't the person controlling the stock. Who controls stocks? Okay, well, you know, it is I know I'm going to get some smart ass answers to this, but who controls stocks? Day traders or long-term traders? At the end of the day, who technically controls stocks? Why day traders? Why long-term traders? I don't just want an answer. I want an explanation. I want you to think. Who technically is the person moving the stock to trade with? There we go. Day traders have a direct impact. And that's a perfect way of saying it. Day traders, now, yes, can longer term people lobby and get things done for news to come out? Yes, of course. But if I want somebody to move a stock 50 cents today, who do I need to follow? It's very simple. You got to follow day trader. Warren Buffett has well, besides the fact if he told you he's buying and or selling in the stock, but those are the day traders that just start funneling in to start pushing that stock that comes back up. So you got to understand, controlling prints can be looked at in a few different ways because it depends on what you're looking for. There's different types of controlling prints. You have, the day trade controlling prints. That means I'm going to be making money now. You have the long-term controlling prints, which means this stock is going to, to the moon. You have different ways of looking at that. But there's sometimes that you get prints at a level, they're nothing. They're literally nothing. It doesn't have to go up. It doesn't have to go down. We need to see a reaction type print to come in order for us to be able to do something. Okay, if you just keep seeing at every level 4 prints, well, that doesn't mean anything. That just means someone keeps giving 4 prints at a level. We need something to stick out based off of what we typically would see there. Okay, why do we like stocks with great volume? Well, because it's completely different than what usually happens. If it's completely different than what usually happens, we know the range should be bigger. We know that we should have more market makers in there. We should be able to make more money coming into it. That's really what it comes down to. So are longer term technically noise? Absolutely not. I'm going to tell you why right now. Okay, if you get long-term prints that come into something, guys, what's the first thing you should think of? As a tape reader, you get long-term prints on the ask that come in. What's the first thing you should think of? Give me some riders, trade it down to the downside. I'm not gonna lie to you. And Steve gave the answer that long-term traders, I think he was the only one that said it. Long-term traders actually control the stock, and technically they do because of the fact, but we're talking about overall. We're not talking about for today, but we're talking about overall. Those are real, when Buffett gets into a stock, that's really what's controlling going on because of all the outside influences and the news and all that other crap. The company itself, it's funny because I call it crap, but what the company does itself as a day trader, I could care less. Doesn't mean anything. So to me, that's crap. Okay, but to somebody else that's on the longer term side, a good company, a strong company is big, is a big deal. That's for anybody that's trading overnight stocks. All right, but when we come into actually thinking what it is, okay, we have to understand that long-term trades are great because they're controlling the stock. We know they have to build, and they don't care if they show something like that. Okay, I want you to just break down tape reading for a second. If a long-term trader comes in and breaks down and just shows, okay, all the retail, I'm taking a huge buying position in this stock. What will retail do? What will retail do 9 times out of 10? They're going to buy it, right? They're going to go into it. So if that happens, okay, that's why we get such great pullbacks on longer term trades that come in, and the game plan's simple. It's just short term. There's not even really much to think about. But why we get such great pullback trades is because that will never change. If the market hears Warren Buffett is going out there and buying, let's just say INO at 1450. Well, the stock's going to run up to 15, and then what's going to end up happening? What's going to end up happening after all the day traders know that Warren Buffett is buying? Oh, they're going to pull back big time because they're going to take all the retail's money. And Buffett's going to build his position lower. But you got to, it's almost like not the pilot fish. Is it the pilot fish that follows the sharks? Why do I think that might be correct. Fortunately, my marine biology degree is is outdated. But yeah, so it's basically like sharks. So you have sharks, and then you have the fish that come and they follow and they clean because they make their living off of that. That's kind of what we are when you think about it. But what happens is that it's a relationship between the Buffett and day traders that come in. It's when he shows a huge position coming in, he knows that day traders are going to take all the retail money on its way down, and he's going to be able to build from it. Okay, and that's as simple as a game plan and as a relationship between that. That's why you don't get a lot of contradiction with big traders and then the day traders, because they kind of work together in that aspect. He shows a huge amount, retail's coming in, because they don't try to take from Buffett. Now, Buffett, I don't really think, from everything I've ever read, I don't really think he goes after other traders because he'll just hold it forever. But you got some people out there, guys, and really that's what it is. It's the ecosystem. But if you have let's say Ackman and what's his name that go after each other all the time, Herbalife and, well, VRX at the time, I'm trying to blank, but either way, doesn't matter. But you have two traders, they don't really fight with each other. Day traders don't fight with the swing traders because they're not going to really be able to make as much as they possibly could. Icon, there we go. So that fight, that rarely ever happens. How often do you guys hear about people that are literally trying to fight each other with shares? It just doesn't work. But there's that symbiotic relationship that comes in with it. And that's why we have to understand that thinking that all at a level of controlling prints are not all controlling prints. Okay, I'm trying to trade all big bursts and use. Okay, so this is another thing. So there's certain things that, okay, controlling prints have to happen. Why do we have to have controlling prints? Let's start there. Because too many times what people try to do is trade all controlling prints and use all controlling prints as their information for tape reading. Okay, but what is it? Okay, what type of prints do we get? What type of prints are within a stock? If we had to kind of start to break this down, and I really kind of want to give you, so we have controlling prints, obviously, right? What other type of prints do we have? So we have controlling prints, reactionary prints. So trading prints, that's interesting because I don't have that on my list. What would you call trading prints? I feel like you might have a different. Yeah, off level. That's really what I'd call trading prints. Most of the time, if they're trading off level, unless you can see that there's an order out there, most of the time off level prints are going to mean that they're actually trading. Okay, but then we also have to look at the chart and see if they're really, in that if it's stuck in a consolidation and we see those off level prints, they mean nothing. Because prints within a consolidation, guys, what does that mean? This is number 6, but we might as well get into this because it's going to help with that. But what do off-level prints within a consolidation mean? Is there any specific way to give an answer for that? No, because it depends on what happened at the high of the consolidation, what happens at the low, the high, the low of the consolidation, what's going on, which side it's leaned toward, what is the money flow, acquisition and distribution, which is kind of what a consolidation is, but all that crap that goes into it. So the prints themselves, depending, there's way more variables that are gonna be there. Okay, but trying to trade all big bursts and use all big bursts as controlling prints aren't going to work, because if you have off-level prints that fit the print personality, that means a lot. That's a big deal. That usually means now, based off of what we have within the chart. So that's not something that too many people. But when the thing is that, let's say we go from 1450. Let's just say we're shorting it 1450 to 14. Are all big bursts within that going to mean something? Are we going to want to follow all big bursts that come within there? Essentially, what the point of this one is that the big burst, guys, can be noise. Even if a big burst fits the print personality, sometimes they're complete noise. When are they complete noise, though? How do we start to understand that? How can we tell if a print, the print personality, let's say, is 4 to 6, and we get 4 to 6 prints just in the middle of nowhere? How do we determine whether it's noise or not? Is there a way? So this is why we're, towards the end, it gets a lot more advanced at this point, but we need to, at that point, understand why they did them. Because if someone covers a short, do they need to make more money? Does someone need to make more money if they cover a short? No, they don't. Someone sells their position. Is there any more money that needs to be made? Nope. So the amount of a pullback and the amount of what's actually going to happen, because remember, so many people think that if you just sell, that the stock's going to go, stock means it must be going down. Okay, but I want you to think about it for a second, because could someone sell because a stock is going to go sideways for a while and it's not worth their time and attention to it? Sure can. Do it all the time. So that's something that we're going to get into a little bit later into actually tomorrow. We're going to get into, but I wanted to kind of put that out there just so you guys kind of understand a little bit. Okay, and the number one problem that every tape reader that starts to try to tape read has, can anyone guess it? I had to end on this one, but can anyone guess what the number one problem that someone that's trying to learn how to tape read has? Copnoso? I'm not sure what that means, Eric. Overanalyzing, okay. Consolidation prints, okay. Try to do too much at once, okay. Not at all wrong. Finding entry, no, not wrong. None of you guys are wrong yet, but that's not the number one reason, the number one problem that people have. NMD, real nice, by the way. No game plan, huge problem, Tracy, but the number one reason and the number one problem, okay, that somebody has when they begin to learn how to tape read is they do something instead of something. Not following anybody, which all these are all right. So it's going to be good for the recording to learn these, because these are all things that we're going to basically try to stop from now on. But there's something that we talk about all the time. Thinking it's black and white, we're almost there, Day-Day. Trade instead of learn, well, that's just a problem. I don't care if you're tape reading or anything. That's just too much of a problem. Reading too much into it, no, it's a problem sometimes. Guys, we've talked about this before. Not using other ask prints, pullbacks, only see the surface of prints without, there we go, Amy. So Amy said, only see the surface of prints without understanding the intentions behind. Reading prints as numbers instead of game plans. That is the number one problem that someone that starts to learn how to tape read has. Because what happens is that everything we just talked about of why tape readers really do have problems in understanding it is that they think 1450 on the ask means the stock needs to come back and needs to go back up. They think that 14, the stock needs to come back and go back up. But we just explained how those two prints are completely different from each other. So to take something, and that's why, Day-Day, you were so close with your black and white, because that kind of falls into it. Everything's not black and white. Okay, you might get at some point, guys, I&O could trade a 400 prints at 1450. They could be short term, but there's something within that game plan that would have shown us that those prints are going to be short term. We would have got a ton of ballsy prints underneath. We would have got a ton of ballsy prints. They would have built at 14 for like 6 days. You know what I'm saying? There's all these variables as a tape reader that we have to take into account. So it's not black and white, but it's seeing what the number is and taking a number rather than understanding what is behind that number. For instance, right now, just look right here and look at this 1420. Okay, what does this 1420 mean statistically? To a high percentage, what does this 1420 mean right now? It's very simple. Okay, so rider, I'm not sure why it's coming down, so I can't tell you if you're right or not. Steve, you might be, but you're close to what I was just gonna say. But is this person long or short? Long or short right here, 1420, short. It's not a sell position, it's a short position. Why? Yeah, it would have sold higher. That would make no sense. Why in the hell would they wait for it to come all the way down to 1420? So right there, I can just base off of that. But that's how I think. It's not 14.20. All right, well, the stock needs to pull up 10 cents and then come back down. No, I don't care about any of that at that moment. It's just that let's just look at it and see what makes sense. This person's actually shorting at 14.20. That's simple. Now we break it down even more into our trading. Okay, look at 14.20. Is this enough prints to break through all of this congestion down here? Not even close, right? So what is it now? What does it now become? There we go. Now it's noise. That simple. See how we can take these things, and this, I know I just wanted to give you guys that quick, last thing, because I know we're out of time, but that's how we determine these things. That's how we tape read. And I know we're scratching the surface, and we have a ton. We're going to accomplish a lot in these next 2 weeks. But I just want you to understand that, because right here it's 4 to 6. So yeah, that kind of stands out a little bit, especially compared to what it's been trading in the past, because its personality's changing. It's 11 o'clock now. Okay, we know based off time frames, guys, that personalities have to change. And if a personality doesn't change during a certain time frame, like for instance after 11 o'clock, then guess what? Get ready to trade it, because that's that's very out of the ordinary coming in. But yeah, so right here, this tells us someone just took a short there. Now, do they need to make money? They do, but do I want to follow this guy down into this congestion as something to make money off of? Because if this guy was a lot more confident in it breaking back down, I would have put a lot more shares into it, wouldn't I? Now, we got another one that comes in here. Maybe he's building a position. Now I'm starting to feel a lot more confident coming down into here. But that first guy didn't mean anything. But we're looking into their soul rather than looking into the numbers. And when I say that, guys, I'm not kidding. You look into their souls and understand what they're going to be doing. And I obviously am kidding, but all right, guys, any questions? I know, unfortunately, my number one goal was to not get too advanced. All right, in our first, I know we kind of went a little bit further into than what I would have liked to. I wanted to kind of keep it a little bit more simple, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. Now, any questions about anything that we went over? Good to go. All right, beautiful. I will talk to everyone in the chat, and remember, Traders Exchange at 12:30.